Businessworld Live. I'm Dani Laurel. We begin our broadcast with the DENR officially lifting the ban on open pit mining. In an order signed on December 23rd, Environment Secretary Roy Cimatu said the move will help spur economic recovery from the pandemic-induced downturn. Cimatu says this will also help provide raw materials for construction and boost employment in rural areas. The order will take effect 15 days after its publication. DENR Undersecretary Jim Sampulna says the lifting of the ban will also provide the government additional funds this pandemic. He notes that the agency has formed an oversight committee to monitor the mining operations. This committee will make sure that public health and environment safety will still be prioritized. Open pit mining was banned by former Secretary Gina Lopez back in 2017 over environmental concerns. Checking in on the market close, after having opened in the red, we've swung back into the green, closing at up 0.4%, 7 to 86.50 here. Aaron Sai was our guest. He is, of course, from First Metro Securities this morning on the show. He was saying that the confidence will be continuing and that will be growing moving forward. He also did, however, say that the market is still lukewarm when it comes to index names, but saying that the waning effect of the COVID crisis should improve corporate earnings. Let's take a look at our big movers of the day, particularly when we talk about the mining sector that is jumping or closing up by 1%. You can see the mining companies jumping here on the back of that open pit mining ban being lifted, led by Mark Ventures up by 5.6%, together with Lepanto, Oriental, Philex with more than 4% gains here. So clearly a very big winner this morning, with only Nickel Asia sitting out that run. Let's take a look at one other counter I'm very interested in to look at today, and that is the financial space. That is up by 0.25% this Tuesday. This on the back as well of the Bangko Sentral saying that they are confident that the Philippines will be meeting our twin goals of digitalizing at least 50% of the retail payments volume and onboarding 70% of Filipino adults to the formal financial system via payments or transaction accounts by 2023. Now, just to highlight how big of the digital payment space is growing, the BSP said that of the total financial transactions in 2020, more than 20% is now digital. And compare that to 1% in 2013. So this, according to Governor Ben Diokno, as more Filipinos embrace this, we expect the phenomenal growth. That they mentioned as well, registered e-money accounts, 138.8 million accounts last year in 2020. And right now, the adults with bank accounts are now 53% of the population as of the first quarter in 2021. Now, just a couple of stocks I'm watching here. Union Bank closing in the red, going against the tide. That's down by 0.5% to 101 pesos and 8 centavos. Now, they had announced this acquisition of the Philippine businesses of Citigroup. However, not so fast, because this, according to the Philippine Competition Commission, they said they have not yet received the notification from Union Bank to acquire Citi's consumer banking unit. There is a 50 billion threshold qualification, and the parties are encouraged to first conduct the due diligence to check if they meet these thresholds and whether, of course, they need to notify the Philippine Competition Commission. Another one that has yet to also notify is Century Pacific Foods, which is up by 1.6%. Again, the PCC has said they have not yet received the notification submissions from Century Pacific Food, which has announced that they wanted to buy Ligo sardines as well as potato corners. Again, two names here that we need to continue watching whether those acquisitions will meet the standards of the Philippine Competition Commission. Now, let's check in on the other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. The reported death toll due to Typhoon Odette has inched closer to 400. The NDRRMC reports that as of this morning, some 397 individuals have been reported dead due to Typhoon Odette. Over 80 people remain missing, while 1,147 people were injured. The DA reports that damage to agriculture has climbed to 6 billion pesos. Now, while the NDRRMC says the estimated damage to infrastructure has increased to 16.7 billion pesos. President Duterte is meanwhile blaming a certain law for supposedly hindering him from immediately declaring a state of calamity after Typhoon Odette's onslaught. Under the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Law, which was signed by former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo in 2010, Duterte says he still needs to wait for an assessment from the NDRRMC before making this declaration. Because of this, the president says he was only able to place 6 regions under a state of calamity several days after Odette ravaged Visayas and Mindanao. The declaration of a state of calamity allows the government to use the emergency funds to assist disaster affected residents. Now, the Department of Health confirms that the husband of the fourth Omicron patient in the country has also tested positive for COVID 19. Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Verger said his DNA samples will be processed for genome sequencing to determine the variant of the virus he was infected with. The couple were initially tested on the same day and were isolated. That's upon the release of their positive results. Now, after the 10th day of isolation, the patients were discharged, both being asymptomatic. The DOH says the two will be retested based on the existing protocols. Meanwhile, the Department of Health has also expressed concern over the uptick in COVID 19 cases over the holiday season. In Metro Manila alone, the positivity rate, or the percentage of those who tested positive for COVID 19, has already doubled in just 1 week from 0.7 to 1.5%. Health officials say the rise in cases is still manageable for now, but the public should take extra caution. Infectious diseases expert Dr. Ronjin Solante says the country may even see a new surge by the end of January, but this will not be as severe as the one we experienced last year. Omicron creeping in slowly, and in the midst of this holiday season, let's take stock of the current economic sentiment on this last trading week of 2021. To share with us his thoughts, we have with us Dan Roses, AVP and Chief Economist at Security Bank. Hello, Sir Dan. Welcome back.
Hi, good afternoon. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, sir. Holidays nga ba talaga? Anyway, we need to, of course, take a step back and reassess all of these things that we've been digesting the past couple of weeks. Let's kick off with Typhoon Odette and the
Okay.
impact of that. Of course, nothing can replace the lost lives here, but we
Mhm.
do need to do our best to rebuild the economy. How do you see now with these tallies of the damages to agriculture, to infrastructure, affecting your growth estimates for the 2021 year?
Well, our growth estimate for the fourth quarter was a bit conservative, no? Given that there were still several risks to the growth, no? That we do not discount. So, the typhoon happened, unfortunately, and we think that's still going to hit the possibly 5.5% growth for the fourth quarter, and that brings the full year-on-year growth estimate around 5.1%. Um, uh, we do think that the damage from Typhoon Odette will not affect much the fourth quarter and overall 2021 growth performance. However, we can expect some effects, possibly into the first quarter of 2022. You have agriculture being hit hard. You have infrastructure that needs to be repaired, no? So likely that's going to provide some catalyst for growth estimates being reclassified, possibly in the first quarter.
Okay, sir. So you did mention that the impact is not yet going to be felt in the fourth quarter. It's likely
Mm-hmm.
to spill over into the first quarter. But actually, with the reopening of the economy, do we have enough, I don't know, ammunition, especially with the consumer spending that we've seen in this holiday season? Not to mention the growth stories around the world, and their economies also helping buoy, I don't know, remittances perhaps. Would
Mm-hmm.
that be able to offset the impact on agriculture?
You're right. No, well, actually, the blow to agriculture was softened by the timing of the storm. No, it hit after much of the previous harvest had been brought in, and the new planting cycle was beginning. So that damage will not affect much of the yield in agri for the fourth quarter. However, that also means agricultural output may decline a bit with the delayed harvest now for the first quarter. So that could be inflationary. And as regards to your question, well, that could offset by much. But traditionally, the first quarter has been a slow remittance. It's a slow remittance period, no. So, but um, there's still some pent up savings, no, I would reckon. So that could likely help offset a bit when it comes to spending, no. Um, Fourth quarter, it's already in the books. No? We're seeing some very good rebound in terms of retail and consumption recovery. That the hope is that that's going to get sustained, no, in the first quarter and up to the second quarter, so that we could see some stability in terms of where the recovery will be. So that's it.
Sir,
Probably the
just to
infrastructure.
clarify,
Yeah,
consumer
sorry.
spending during the holidays better than expected?
Yeah, I would think it's better than expected. No? The initial, well, it came from the third quarter GDP reading. No, consumption was the driver, and that was in the midst of a lockdown in September, no, because of Delta. No, so right now what we're seeing is looser curbs, and probably consumption will still be the main driver for the fourth quarter GDP. No?
Sir, how worried are you about inflation running away, especially since our main issue for arresting inflation was really the price of food
Food, yeah.
and agriculture, and we did we were addressing palang the pork supply issues, we were addressing the vegetable prices, and now to what extent is that going to hurt consumers' pockets?
Well, agriculture output accounts for about 10% of the GDP, no, and farmers around 25% of the workforce. Um, in terms of inflation, I think the typhoon-induced inflation will be transitory at best. It could likely last until February. It could come from uh, not rice, which is the most inflationary component of the food basket. It could likely come from shortages in terms of fish, no? Which is uh, weighted the same in the CPI basket, no? Similar to pork. However, that should prove transitory because, like I said, the timing was actually better when the typhoon hit, no, unfortunately. But it did not affect the harvest much. It could just lead to some delays. But the thing we have to watch out for is the stickiness of the food prices. No? Food prices will
Mm.
remain sticky going down in March. That's still going to be cost push induced. No? The timing of the recovery might also induce some demand pull inflation. No? So that's something that we have to watch out for up until probably the end of the first quarter of next year. Um, um, Food prices always remain sticky going down. No? So that could provide some temporary worry in terms of where inflation might land and relative to how the monetary authority should react, no, to control inflation. But I don't
Okay.
expect it to be um, something that's going to be permanent, no, for the whole of 2022 at least.
Okay, so until February, hopefully transitory.
Hopefully.
Sir,
Mhm.
delay in budget signing,
Okay.
how big of an impact to your GDP projections for next year would this happen? We've seen this happening before. What would be the impact if we simply operate on a reenacted budget?
Well, I hope we do not operate on a reenacted budget because that would be really bad. Now we've been talking about Typhoon Odette, so we need that spending to go out already. Estimates show that if the budget is signed um, within the new period, I think that's going to be December 30 or 31. By January 3, the fund for recovery will already be there. No, if
Mm.
not, we'll be running on a reenacted budget of 4.6 trillion, similar to 2021, until the budget gets signed. And that's only going to cause some delays in terms of recovery, and it's also going to cause some, negative perception towards our national government. No, so it has to be signed because all the program spending is there, and most of it starts at the first week of January. No? So if it doesn't get signed, that's going to be a negative signal already, and that's going to affect the financial markets as well,
Okay, so talagang important for the response of the Typhoon Odette onslaught that this gets signed.
especially that
Finally, sir,
response.
last question. Sir, what's your outlook on unemployment recovery? Have we already hit rock bottom, in 2020, and also this year we've been moving sideways? Is there going to be a clear trend towards reducing this unemployment?
Well, we think unemployment could actually improve now, given that there's some better activity in the fourth quarter. We could likely end the year at still elevated levels, possibly at around 6%, 6% unemployment. No, that's still elevated. However, that's better than what we saw last year around September, and that's closer to the pre-pandemic baseline of 5.4%. So we'll likely hit
Okay.
5.4% next year if we do recover with stability.
Mhm.
Um, but it's going to improve. No, we just have to watch out for how the agriculture sector has been impacted as well, because that's going to be contributing to the unemployment numbers,
Correct.
especially because it's one of the biggest. It's the biggest employment sector in the
In
economy.
terms of numbers, so the farmers and fisher folks. Thank you so much, sir. That was, of course, Dan Rosas, AVP and Chief Economist at Security Bank.
Thank you.
And those are the biggest stories this trading day, December 28, 2021. Catch Business World Live. That's tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Danny Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.